I want to ask you about what went down this past week with Mac Jones. We heard a lot about how he had a short leash. This was talked about on Sunday Countdown. This was talked about on the NFL Network, on Fox. He's got a short leash, and if he makes another mistake, he's going to get the quick hook. Then he made a mistake, and he didn't get the quick hook. Why do you think the narratives around Mac Jones and how the Patriots were going to handle him this week don't line up with him playing that entire game last week?
Yeah, I don't know if all that reporting was hearsay or was it actually coming from the building. You just never know in those regards. I'm not trying to discredit the people that were saying that stuff, but we all know sometimes in this world things kind of take off in the NFL. I kind of talked about this last week with the whole. I think people in that building, at least I've heard this. Again, you've got to trust some of the stuff that is getting said, but I've heard that the people in the building know how poor it is around him and how bad it is, how tough it is support-wise. And so when that interception gets thrown, it's a little bit different. Listen, it's a bad throw. That was a bad throw by Mac Jones. It's a bad throw. Because it was more just, hey, that was a bad throw rather than, oh my gosh, that was a stupid decision. Sometimes you're going to have, plays that are just bad plays rather than dumb decisions. I don't know if that factored into it at all in the moment on the sidelines. But I don't know exactly why the report was one thing and maybe the action didn't follow per the report.
A couple weeks ago, you talked to us about watching Mac's feet and just how sloppy they were and how much that was affecting him in that really bad 2-game stretch between the Cowboys and the Saints game. Have you seen any improvement there, at least even last week against Vegas? Yes.
It's not where the place where you want it to be, but it has gotten better. It was less. Now, was that because the protection wasn't as distraught or devastatingly bad as it was in those 2 weeks? Maybe. The protection still wasn't very good, obviously, with Max having a lot of control in the game, but it was better. There was probably 3 throws where you sit there and say it showed itself again. It reared its ugly head again, but Mac, his feet were calmer. I thought there was a little bit more protection or at least trust to the protection in the pocket. In regards to Mac's performance, I would say this. First of all, it's impossible to play at a consistent level in the NFL without details by everybody in your offense. By everybody. The first play of the game, it's an example of how we can't get a screen done in a detailed fashion? How is that happening? The screen game for them is bad. There's 3 more drops. They can't protect. There was a couple good slants thrown. There's good timing in some zones. There's a couple plays where I don't know what Devontae Parker is necessarily doing. Some of the RPOs went good. And then sometimes I feel like there's plays where I'm just like, it almost looks like they're just giving up play call wise to the situation. So
Bill
obviously
O'Brien?
The last drop by Devontae, it just feels that way. I don't know if it's like, I think in the third quarter, 2:43 on the clock, I watched that play call. I'm like, it just feels like they're just like, all right, here, we'll just call this play and hopefully nothing bad happens, even though you're still in the football game. So I thought Max played okay, not great, but he was fine, given everything around him still being poor.
Dan, if there were reports, I guess, in the offseason, we never really got confirmation on them, but there were reports that Bill Belichick had put Mac Jones on the trade block. The trade deadline's a couple weeks away. What type of return do you think they would get for Mac if they did put him on the block again, and do you think that's something they should consider?
Oof. Wow. The NFL moves quickly. So should they consider it? I think that is the question okay, the answer to that question is yes, if they have made the determination that they are done with Mac. And when I say they, it's Mr. Kraft, and then it's Bill Belichick. Now, both those guys need to be in conjunction thinking that they're going to be together next year. And I know that's become a topic of conversation. Is Coach Belichick going to be there? Is Mr. Kraft going to do something? Obviously, the years of disappointment over the last 3. So if both of those guys, like, we're done with Mac Jones, we are definitely doing something else, then the answer to that question is unquestionably yes. What would they get in return? I mean, I don't know, a fourth-round pick, but that's a total guess. Like, that's not my wheelhouse on that stuff, you know? And then I think, like, who...
Dan, well, to interrupt, and maybe you're just about to say this,
for.
but yeah, it's right. So Trey Lance went for a fourth-round pick. Does he have fans within the league? Like, would there be teams lining up if the Patriots made him available, or teams calling if the Patriots made him available?
Oh, I think so for sure. I think you can watch the tape and still say, like, the talent, the good player ability is unquestionably still there. The last 2 years, I know everybody sits here and says, like, oh, I make excuses for guys. Like, this is my comparison here, guys. It's a fascinating thing to watch Desmond Ridder and Mac Jones, okay? Desmond Ridder is struggling.
I was going to say, disagree.
Like,
not my favorite football.
But like Desmond Ridder's struggling, you know, like, but he's got a ton of help around him. He's got a really good defense. The offensive line's a very good offensive line, specifically in the run game. And Drake London and Kyle Pitts and Bijan and Algier are really good. And he's got a crazy creative play caller. So you sit there and go, like, well, what does the quarterback need? Desmond Ridder's in a pretty darn good place to play good football. And he's struggling. And Mac Jones is struggling. But he doesn't have any of what Desmond Ridder does. And that's kind of like because the conversation always, I think before I came on, I heard somebody, and I don't know exactly who it was on the show, was like, well, yeah, like, if you need all that to be around you, what are you? But every quarterback needs it around them. Like, every quarterback needs something around them to do something with. And Desmond has it, and it's not working out. It's really tough to gauge or evaluate Mac Jones and say he's bad when he's got that to work with.
So look, and we were talking about the weapons here. I would just say, you know, someone like Brock Purdy, and they've had a lot of talent in San Francisco. Purdy, I think, has kind of elevated what they've done, and they've lost games with Nick Mullins, and they've lost games with C.J. Beathard.
Yes.
So to me, I mean, there is a difference even when you have stuff around. But agree to disagree on that. When it comes to Bill Belichick, your colleague Teddy Bruschi said Bill should walk away at the end of the year. That would be his advice to Bill Belichick. What do you think happens with Bill at the end of the year?
Yeah, I think it's going to become a conversation. You know, Teddy obviously knows better, and I think his point of their wins used to always be in context to the team, and now they're so much about Coach Belichick. If it continues to go the way it's going, it's hard to sit there and say it can't be a conversation. The lack of details on both sides of the ball are shocking. I mean, they played cover 2 last week a couple of times, and there's no one near some of the underneath throws. So I think, like, that's the most jarring thing right now is this was an organization that for 20 plus years was the trademark, the standard setter when it came to detailed football, and that's the opposite. So you know, I think that's, you know, kind of a pretty fair thing to say is that it's going to be a part of the conversation. The last thing I'd say in relation to the Purdy Mac Jones thing, you know, Mac Jones thrown 42 touchdowns. None of them have been to Pro Bowlers. Not a one. Brock Purdy's thrown 24. 19 of them are to Pro Bowlers. It matters.
No, I mean, look, Brock Purdy's got a lot more around him than Mac Jones. But I do think they've looked better than they ever have. But we'll pick this up next week when we talk to Dan.
Brock Purdy absolutely has elevated that offense. Absolutely.
Oh, so I was about to say we'll ask you about this next week. But my producer just reminded me there was a video from Laurel Rutledge. I forget what this is from. NFL Live. You like to not actually eat Mentos, right? You like the taste of Mentos, but you don't like to actually ingest them, eat them?
Yeah, so, like, I have a sweet tooth. It's a big thing, but I also don't want to take all the inside sugar or whatever Mentos is made of and kind of, like, eat it all. So I just will, like, essentially suck on the Mentos or whatever. It's a weird phrasing. And then spit it out. So I'm only getting, like, the sweet tooth craving cure.
But you just like leave it like chewed gum. You just like leave it on the desk there, or was that just for show?
Yeah.
What was that? Yeah.
I am a Neanderthal, guys. Like, I am an absolute, like, old school human being where I'll suck water. I grew up when we're outside playing with my kids. My kids get thirsty. They're drinking from a hose. They're not running inside and getting a Aquafina. So I'm a little bit of a throwback person.
Okay, well, that I can respect. It's Dan Orlovsky each and every week here on Jones and Mego with Arcand, Wednesdays at 3:30. Dan, we'll talk to you next Wednesday. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
All right, Dan Orlovsky on the Harbor One Hotline.
Such a weirdo.
I kind of
every week there's some very weird detail about his life.
I'm happy Ryan reminded me of that. But kids drinking out of hoses. I think that is kind of good for you.